What if I told you that one book written over 50 years ago predicted our current obsessions with environmental collapse, political manipulation, and the dangerous seduction of messianic leaders? Today, we're diving deep into Frank Herbert's masterpiece, Dune, a novel that didn't just create a science fiction epic, but delivered a prophetic warning about power, religion, and humanity's relationship with nature that feels more relevant today than ever before. Most people think Dune is just another space opera about a chosen one defeating evil, but they're missing the point entirely. Herbert crafted something far more sophisticated and disturbing. This isn't a simple hero's journey. It's a complex examination of how good intentions can lead to galactic genocide, how environmental destruction drives political control, and how even the most well-meaning messiah can become humanity's greatest threat. As someone who has analysed thousands of books throughout my editorial career, I can tell you that Dune stands apart not just for its world building, which is legendary, but for its unflinching examination of power structures that mirror our own world with terrifying accuracy. Herbert didn't just write science fiction, he wrote a manual for understanding how civilizations rise, fall, and manipulate their populations through fear, scarcity, and false promises of salvation. The timing of this analysis couldn't be more perfect. In our current era of climate crisis, political polarization, and the rise of charismatic leaders promising simple solutions to complex problems, Herbert's warnings about the dangers of messianic thinking and ecological destruction read like tomorrow's headlines. This book predicted the weaponization of environmental scarcity, the manipulation of religious beliefs for political gain, and the devastating consequences of placing ultimate power in the hands of any single individual, no matter how noble their intentions. Let me take you through why this book matters more now than it did when it was first published, and how its lessons can help us navigate the dangerous waters of our own turbulent times. Frank Herbert's Dune emerged from the desert sands of literary imagination in 1965, but its roots run far deeper than most readers realise. Herbert spent 6 years crafting this universe, driven by his fascination with ecology, politics, and the dangerous allure of charismatic leadership. What started as research into sand dunes in Oregon evolved into a meditation on power, survival, and the price of prescience. The novel's genesis reveals Herbert's true intentions. He wasn't interested in creating another space adventure filled with clear heroes and villains. Instead, he wanted to explore how environmental scarcity shapes political power, how religious beliefs can be manufactured and manipulated, and how even the most well-intentioned leaders can become tyrants when granted absolute authority. These themes emerge from Herbert's own experiences as a journalist covering politics and his deep study of ecology, religion, and human psychology. Herbert's background as a newspaper reporter gave him unique insights into how information is controlled and manipulated by those in power. His interest in ecology led him to understand how environmental resources become weapons of control. His study of comparative religion revealed how spiritual beliefs can be engineered to serve political ends. All these elements converged in Dune, creating a work that transcends genre boundaries. The novel's publication coincided with growing environmental awareness in the 1960s, yet Herbert's ecological message went far beyond simple conservation. He envisioned a future where water scarcity drives interplanetary politics, where understanding natural systems becomes the key to survival, and where the misuse of environmental resources leads to civilizational collapse. This wasn't just science fiction speculation, it was environmental prophecy. What makes Dune particularly remarkable is how Herbert refused to glorify his protagonist. Paul Atreides isn't a traditional hero saving the galaxy. He's a young man trapped by his own prescient abilities, forced to choose between personal morality and the survival of humanity. Herbert deliberately crafted Paul as a cautionary tale about the dangers of messianic leadership, showing how even noble intentions can lead to horrific consequences when combined with absolute power. The story begins on the desert planet Arrakis, the only source of the universe's most valuable substance, the spice melange. This drug extends life, enhances mental abilities, and makes space travel possible, giving whoever controls it ultimate power over galactic civilization. The noble house Atreides receives stewardship of Arrakis from the Emperor, but this apparent honour conceals a deadly trap designed to destroy them. Duke Leto Atreides understands the danger, but accepts the assignment, hoping to form alliances with the planet's native population, the Fremen. These desert dwellers have adapted to Arrakis' harsh environment, developing a culture centred on water conservation and survival. Unknown to most, they also harbour a secret. they're far more numerous and militarily capable than anyone realises. The trap springs when the Atreides' enemies, House Harkonnen, attack with Imperial support. Duke Leto dies, but his concubine Jessica and son Paul escape into the desert. Jessica belongs to the Bene Gesserit, a secretive sisterhood that has spent centuries manipulating genetics and religion to create a prophesied superhuman. Paul discovers he may be this prophesied figure, the Kwisatz Haderach, possessing prescient abilities that allow him to see possible futures. Paul and Jessica find refuge among the Fremen, where Paul takes the name Muad'Dib and begins fulfilling Fremen prophecies that the Bene Gesserit planted generations earlier. His prescient visions reveal a horrifying truth. His rise to power will trigger a galactic holy war that will kill billions. Yet every alternative future he sees leads to humanity's extinction. Torn between personal morality and species survival, Paul chooses the path of the Messiah, knowing it will make him responsible for unprecedented destruction. He leads the Fremen in a campaign that defeats the Harkonnens and forces the Emperor to abdicate. Paul becomes Emperor, but his victory comes with the terrible knowledge that he has set in motion forces that will devastate the galaxy. The novel ends with Paul's ascension to power, but Herbert makes clear this isn't a triumphant conclusion. Paul has become the very thing he sought to prevent, a tyrant whose rule will be built on religious fanaticism and violence. His prescient abilities, meant to guide humanity towards survival, have instead trapped him in a role that will define him as history's greatest monster. The manipulation of House Atreides reveals Herbert's understanding of political machinations that echo throughout history. The Emperor's decision to destroy the Atreides stems not from personal animosity, but from calculated fear of their growing power and popularity. Duke Leto's honourable reputation and military effectiveness make him a threat to imperial authority, demonstrating how competence and integrity can become liabilities in corrupt systems. The conspiracy involves multiple parties with different motivations. The Emperor fears political rivals, the Harkonnens seek revenge and profit, and the Spacing Guild requires stability for their monopoly on interstellar travel. This complex web of interests shows how political destruction rarely results from simple evil, but from the intersection of legitimate fears, selfish ambitions, and systemic preservation instincts. Paul's awakening to his prescient abilities represents one of literature's most sophisticated examinations of predestination versus free will. Unlike typical chosen one narratives, Paul's powers don't liberate him, but imprison him within increasingly narrow choices. His visions reveal that every decision creates cascading consequences across time, and his attempts to avoid catastrophic futures only make them more likely. Herbert crafts this dilemma to explore how knowledge of the future becomes a burden rather than a gift, and how the responsibility of prescience can corrupt even the most well-intentioned individuals. Paul's struggle with his abilities reflects humanity's broader relationship with technological power and the unintended consequences of our actions. The Fremen culture demonstrates Herbert's deep understanding of how harsh environments shape human adaptation and social organisation. Their desert survival techniques, from still suits that recycle body moisture to their reverence for water as sacred, illustrate how scarcity drives innovation and cultural values. More importantly, their hidden strength challenges assumptions about primitive versus advanced civilizations. The Fremen's military capabilities, developed through constant environmental pressure, prove superior to the advanced technology of their oppressors. Herbert uses this reversal to critique colonial attitudes and show how indigenous peoples often possess knowledge and capabilities that dominant cultures fail to recognise or understand. The spice melange functions as both a literal resource and a metaphor for how control of essential commodities shapes political power. Herbert's conception of spice predates but parallels modern discussions about oil, rare earth minerals, and other resources that determine global influence. The spice's multiple properties, from life extension to space navigation, make it irreplaceable, giving whoever controls its productions ultimate leverage over civilization. This dependency creates the novel's central tension. The desert planet's harsh environment makes spice production difficult, but those same conditions have created a population capable of disrupting the entire system. Herbert shows how resource dependency creates vulnerability and how environmental challenges can become sources of power. The Bene Gesserit sisterhood represents Herbert's exploration of how religious and genetic manipulation can serve political ends. Their centuries-long breeding program aims to create a superhuman they can control, while their Missionaria Protectiva plants religious beliefs in primitive populations to provide future opportunities for manipulation. This systematic approach to social engineering reveals Herbert's concerns about how institutions shape human development and belief systems. The Bene Gesserit's methods appear benevolent, focusing on human potential and survival, but their ultimate goal is control over humanity's future. Their failure to control Paul demonstrates the dangers of assuming that creative powers can be contained or directed. Paul's transformation from Duke's son to messianic leader illustrates the corrupting nature of absolute power and the dangers of charismatic leadership. His journey shows how good intentions can lead to horrific outcomes when combined with the ability to inspire fanatical devotion. Paul's prescient abilities give him strategic advantages, but they also reveal the terrible price of his success. Billions will die in his name. Herbert deliberately crafts this transformation to warn against the seduction of messianic thinking, showing how even reluctant leaders can become tyrants when their followers demand absolutes. Paul's tragedy lies not in his corruption, but in his clear understanding of what he's becoming, and his inability to choose a different path. The climactic battle against the Harkonnens and Imperial forces demonstrates how environmental knowledge can overcome technological superiority. The Fremen's understanding of desert warfare, combined with their ability to ride the giant sandworms, proves decisive against advanced military technology. This victory isn't just military, but symbolic, representing the triumph of ecological adaptation over technological dominance. Herbert uses this conflict to explore themes of sustainability versus exploitation, showing how those who understand natural systems ultimately possess advantages over those who simply try to dominate them. The battle's outcome reshapes galactic power structures, but Herbert makes clear that this victory carries the seeds of future catastrophe. The novel's conclusion with Paul's ascension to Emperor provides no triumphant resolution, but instead sets up the tragic consequences of his choices. Paul's final acceptance of his role as Messiah represents his complete transformation from hero to tyrant, even as he retains his moral awareness of the destruction he will cause. Herbert ends the novel with Paul's victory feeling like defeat, emphasizing how the achievement of power often corrupts the very goals that motivated its pursuit. This ending serves as Herbert's ultimate warning about the dangers of placing ultimate authority in any individual, regardless of their abilities or intentions. Environmental scarcity drives political control in ways that create both opportunity and danger for those who understand natural systems. Herbert's portrayal of water scarcity on Arrakis demonstrates how environmental challenges don't just create survival problems, but reshape entire social and political structures. The Fremen's adaptation to their harsh environment gives them hidden advantages that more technologically advanced civilizations fail to recognize. This teaches us that environmental challenges often create unexpected sources of power, and that those who understand ecological systems possess strategic advantages over those who simply try to dominate them. In our current era of climate change and resource depletion, Herbert's lessons about the political implications of environmental scarcity feel particularly relevant. The manufacturing of religious beliefs for political purposes reveals how spiritual systems can be weaponized to serve secular power structures. The Bene Gesserit's Missionaria Protectiva demonstrates how prophecies and religious narratives can be strategically planted to create future opportunities for manipulation. This systematic approach to belief engineering shows how authentic spiritual experiences can coexist with manufactured religious systems, making it difficult for individuals to distinguish between genuine faith and political manipulation. Herbert's warning about the susceptibility of religious belief to political exploitation offers crucial insights for navigating our own era of information warfare and ideological manipulation. Prescient abilities and advanced knowledge create moral burdens rather than simple advantages for those who possess them. Paul's prescient visions trap him in increasingly narrow choices, demonstrating how knowledge of consequences can become a prison rather than a liberation. This reflects broader themes about technological power and the responsibility that comes with advanced capabilities. Herbert shows how the ability to see outcomes doesn't necessarily provide the power to change them, and how knowledge of future consequences can force individuals into roles they never wanted to play. This serves as a warning about the moral complexities of wielding advanced knowledge or technology. Charismatic leadership contains inherent dangers that persist regardless of a leader's intentions or abilities. Paul's transformation from reluctant hero to tyrannical emperor illustrates how even the most well-intentioned individuals can become instruments of oppression when granted absolute power. Herbert deliberately crafts Paul's character to show how charisma, combined with genuine abilities and noble intentions, can still lead to catastrophic outcomes. This serves as a warning against messianic thinking and the human tendency to seek simple solutions to complex problems through powerful leaders. The novel suggests that systemic problems require systemic solutions, not individual saviours. The interdependence of seemingly separate systems creates vulnerabilities that can be exploited by those who understand these connections. The Spice's role in space travel, life extension, and consciousness expansion makes it irreplaceable, creating a single point of failure for galactic civilization. Herbert shows how complex systems often depend on resources or capabilities that seem peripheral but are actually essential. This teaches us to examine the hidden dependencies in our own systems and to be wary of over-reliance on any single resource, technology, or institution. Understanding these interdependencies provides both strategic advantages and responsibilities for maintaining systemic stability. Cultural adaptation to harsh environments often produces capabilities that advanced civilizations fail to recognize or understand. The Fremen's desert survival skills and military capabilities demonstrate how indigenous knowledge and environmental adaptation can provide advantages over technological superiority. Herbert uses this reversal to critique assumptions about primitive versus advanced cultures, showing how different environmental pressures produce different forms of sophistication. This teaches us to respect and learn from cultures that have adapted to challenging environments rather than dismissing them as backward or primitive. The pursuit of genetic and social perfection through systematic manipulation contains inherent dangers and unpredictable consequences. The Bene Gesserit's breeding program aims to create a controllable superhuman, but instead produces Pol, who exceeds their ability to control or predict. Herbert demonstrates how attempts to engineer human development, whether through genetics, education, or social conditioning, often produce unintended results that exceed the original parameters. This serves as a warning about the hubris of assuming we can control or predict the outcomes of human development programs. Resource dependency creates power structures that can be disrupted by those who control essential resources or understand alternative systems. The galactic civilization's dependence on spice creates vulnerability to disruption by those who understand Arrakis and its inhabitants. Herbert shows how resource monopolies create both power and vulnerability, and how those who control essential resources bear enormous responsibility for maintaining systemic stability. This teaches us to examine our own resource dependencies and to consider the ethical implications of controlling resources that others depend on for survival. The corruption of power occurs not just through personal weakness, but through systemic pressures that reshape individuals regardless of their original intentions. Paul's transformation demonstrates how political and social systems can corrupt even the most well-intentioned individuals by creating pressures and expectations that force them into roles they never wanted to play. Herbert shows how power structures have their own momentum and logic that can override individual moral choices. This teaches us to be wary of systems that concentrate power and to create institutional safeguards against the corruption of power. Frank Herbert's Dune stands as more than a science fiction masterpiece. It serves as a prophetic warning about the dangers facing our own civilization. Written over 50 years ago, its themes of environmental destruction, political manipulation, and the seduction of messianic leadership feel startlingly contemporary. Herbert didn't just create an entertaining space opera, he crafted a mirror that reflects our own world's struggles with resource scarcity, climate change, and the rise of charismatic leaders promising simple solutions to complex problems. The novel's enduring relevance lies in its refusal to provide easy answers or comfortable heroes. Paul Atreides isn't a traditional saviour, but a cautionary tale about the corrupting nature of absolute power. His prescient abilities, meant to guide humanity towards survival, instead trap him in a role that will define him as history's greatest monster. This paradox reflects Herbert's understanding that even the most well-intentioned solutions can become part of the problem when they concentrate too much power in individual hands. Herbert's ecological message resonates particularly strongly in our current era of climate crisis. His portrayal of how environmental scarcity drives political control and social transformation provides insights into how resource depletion might reshape our own civilization. The Fremen's adaptation to their harsh environment offers both hope and warning about humanity's ability to survive environmental challenges through cultural and technological innovation. His novel suggests that humanity's survival depends not on finding the right leader, but on creating systems that prevent any individual from accumulating too much power over others. In our current moment of global challenges and political uncertainty, Herbert's warnings about the dangers of messianic thinking and environmental destruction offer crucial guidance for navigating an uncertain future.